leaders of Aga Khan Foundation, Bangladesh, leaders of AKDN, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be invited to speak on this occasion, future of education in Bangladesh. I recall that Aga Khan Foundation started its activities in 1980. And over these years, at least from 1990 onwards, for 2 decades, Aga Khan Foundation had partnered with BRAC in many of its development programs, including education, health, and rural development. So Aga Khan Foundation has been our partner for prolonged periods of time, and I have also had opportunities to speak to many conferences and events organized by Aga Khan Foundation here in Bangladesh as well as in London and Canada, various cities of Canada. So it is a great pleasure for me to be present here today to speak on the future of education in Bangladesh. But before we look at the future, I will just briefly look at the past. In this 7,000 years of human history, education did not have much importance to general public. It was restricted to only a microscopic minority of ruling elite. It's only in the second millennium of the Christian era, in the last millennium, in other words, that education for citizens became important. And the first country to do that, starting to educate citizens, was China. And by the 12th century, China had 30% of its population was literate. The first country to reach 30% literacy rate. And then by the 15th century, after the European Renaissance, they started catching up with China. And in the 16th century, most European countries had 30% literacy rate. 17th century was just before the pre-industrial revolution started, and literacy started becoming important. And most countries looked at providing education to their citizens, and not just the ruling elite, because they wanted workers to work in the factories who were literate. So by 18th century, most countries in Europe, including America, started to provide education to their citizens. But most of this education was provided by the church, not by the state. The state became involved in education only in the 19th century in a big way. So most countries in Europe and in America, 19th century was the century in which most countries made education compulsory for all its citizens, all their citizens. So it's about 200 years of compulsory primary education for all citizens was instituted in Europe and North America. But in our, so they are about 200 years ahead of us in a way, because when we in Bangladesh started looking at education, the first time that Bangladesh made education compulsory for its citizens was in 1990 by President Ershad. And in 1991, Begum Zia came to power, and she made legislation to get all citizens of Bangladesh between the ages of 6 and 10 to be in school. But then Bangladesh didn't really have schools for its children. So although we made it compulsory, but we didn't make it a right. We didn't make it a right in the sense that a child doesn't have a right to a school place because we cannot provide it. It's only recently that India has made education a right. To a child can demand to be in school, to be admitted into a school. And so I hope that we will follow India and make Bangladesh also, Bangladeshi children also have the right to education. So, but then what happened in the recent past in this country? I talked about Europe. During the British time, education didn't have much importance, other than the fact that they wanted to create civil servants to serve the British Raj. So they provided schools and colleges to create clerks and magistrates and so on from our country. But ordinary citizens, it was not thought that ordinary citizens need to have education. So not many schools were created by them. And so by the turn of when the British Raj left, the first census in Pakistan was carried out in 1951. And in that census, East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, had a literacy rate of 19%. So British Raj, that they didn't do much can be gleaned from these statistics of 19% literacy rate after 4 years after the British left. And then what happened during the Pakistan time is also can be gleaned from the statistics of 1973 census of Bangladesh, in which we looked at what was the literacy rate of Bangladesh in 1973. It was 25%, 18% for women and 32% for men. So that was the Pakistan's achievements from taking it to from 19% to 25%. So by the time BRAC went into looking at primary education for children, that was in 1980, we had, as I said, the literacy rate of around 25 to 25, and we had an enrollment rate in Bangladeshi primary schools was 60% of our children enrolled, 40% never enrolled in a school. So these 60%, those who were enrolled, half of them dropped out before completing 5 years of primary education. So what happened is that, so basically 30% were completed primary education, and probably our literacy rate would have gone up to about 40%, because those who didn't complete primary education, some of them were literate in the sense that they could read and write. So our system was geared towards providing a literacy rate of about 40% in 1980. And BRAC looked at it and said what we can do in terms of providing education to all our children. So we started looking at, we started a program of one teacher schools, one teacher and 30 children in schools. So we started with an experimental 22 schools initially to try and find out whether we can provide high quality education to these children. So 22 schools, 10 of them were in our project area where we had microfinance, healthcare, and so on. And 12 of them were outside our project area. We wanted to ensure that we can do education anywhere in the country, not necessarily supported by our own programs in any way. So because we wanted to provide education to fragile learners, so we had to be careful about quality that we provided. So the 22 schools, after 5 years of education, we found that our children were actually far superior to the national education system. Those who came out of primary schools in Bangladesh, where our children were better in maths, our children were better in reading, writing skills, and generally were superior in terms of educational achievements. And so we were quite, since we wanted to provide education to the poorest children, we also didn't want to compete with the government system, because the government immediately started looking at us as a competitor. And we said that, all right, we will not take any child which is less than 8 years old. So by the time a child has not been in school at the age of 8, it's unlikely that they will go to school ever. So we'll take the children at the age of 8, and those children who dropped out of school and were above the age of 9, we will take them. So it was a second chance for them. So we started 2 sets of schools, one for 8 to 10-year-olds and another for 11 to 15-year-olds. That was the second chance for those who had dropped out and would like to continue education. But how did we develop our curriculum and materials and methods and systems in such a way that they would provide high-quality education? We were determined to get highest quality education to the poorest children. I remember in 1984, there was an article in Newsweek which talked about 10 best schools in the world. What are these 10 best schools? One is the Dutch schools. They are the best for mathematics and languages. So any Dutch child, 13-year-old, would know at least 2 other languages other than his own, and they were taught very well, and they were also smarter than other children in maths. The Germans were the best for running their education system. They trained their teachers well. The teachers worked longer hours, so their system was more efficient in providing education to their children. The Italians were the best for preschool. You remember the Montessori system was created by the Italians. So they were and of course, the Italians love children. They get, their bambinos they get very excited about seeing children. And so they provide very high quality education to preschool children. The Swedes are the best for adult education. So if you have studied literature or philosophy in your early childhood or your youth, and then at the age of 50 you want to brush up again, you can go to university and take classes. So they provide educational opportunities for all ages and whatever you want to study. So it's kind of continuing education for citizens. So Sweden provides that. The Japanese were the best for science education. The Americans were best for their PhD, 5-year PhDs, 6-year PhDs. You can't finish PhDs in 2 years like you can do in England or other places. So their PhDs are the best. And the New Zealanders are the best for mother tongue education. So I thought what we could learn from these best schools in the world. I got the curriculum out of the Dutch, how they teach their maths classes. So curriculum, their teaching, their books was brought in from Holland to Bangladesh. We got, sent one of my directors to see Sir Edmund Hillary, who was then the ambassador of New Zealand to India, to Bangladesh also, based in India. So we sent to him, said that could we have a couple of teachers from New Zealand to come and help us in understanding how to teach language to children. So he sent out two teachers from New Zealand to work with us to try and get the best way how to teach language. And we had an English professor who developed curriculum for Africa, mathematics curriculum for Africa. He also came and helped work with us in developing maths curriculum for our education system. So, we tried to take the best out of various parts of the world what we could adapt for Bangladesh situation. And then our school's curriculum was developed. So it was one teacher school with 30 children. We supervised that school twice a week. A supervisor would go and check whether the teacher has got the lesson plans properly in place, whether she is teaching in the right way and things like that. And then every teacher will be brought in every month for one-day refresher course. So a batch of teachers will come in, 30, 40 teachers, and they will learn from each other as well as from their supervisor as to how to teach better. So that went on, and of course, our education program then started expanding throughout Bangladesh. So by the end of the century, in the year 2000, we had 34,000 one-teacher schools with 1.2 million children in them and getting education of quite high quality. And I thought that poorest children having primary education would be quite content with it. But no, we were surprised that 94% of our children transitioned on to high school because they were not content with just having primary education. So we obviously have been able to inspire them to go further and learn more. And so that became a problem again for us. These secondary schools, in those days there were about 8,000 secondary schools in Bangladesh. And now, of course, there are 20,000 secondary schools in Bangladesh. Most of them are very low quality, taught by teachers who are not able to teach, not qualified to teach. So what do you do with them? So we just started taking 4,000 schools of low quality schools to try and improve the quality of these schools. So the first thing to do, of course, is to get the headmasters in and get them to understand the quality requires these inputs. So his teachers has to be able to teach better. He needs to know his subject better. He needs to be disciplined. He needs to look at each child, not just talk to a class and 4 or 5 children in the front, understanding what he's talking about, and the rest of them are not understanding anything at all. So that was, so we started this 4,000 schools, teachers started coming in, and we started training them in English, maths, and science. But then it was not really training, it was really education. We taught them maths to be able to teach maths. We taught them English in order to teach English. And we taught them science in order to be able to teach science. So that's what we continue to do. We still do it. We still continue to do, and we are looking at these improvements of these schools' achievements in the matriculation examination results that we look at. We monitor every year and we see how they are improving through the system. And I'm happy to say that all the schools that we work with have been continuously improving their results in the matriculation examinations. And that's the only way I could find as to how they are doing in Bangladesh. So, so this is going on right now. And but then the real disappointment for me was that all these educational activities that we do, the government didn't learn anything from us. They think they know everything themselves. They don't want to learn from anybody else, particularly an NGO. So the disappointment was that we took 10% of our children was educated by BRAC, but the 90% of the children are going to government schools. If the government doesn't learn anything, then we haven't really contributed much to Bangladesh's education and achievements. So what to do? So I started in university. and the first graduate school in the university is the Institute of Educational Development. We wanted to develop educational methods and systems and train government officials, if possible, to be able to improve education in Bangladesh. So we provided, and we are also working with the government in curriculum development, in textbook development, and so on. So the whole team in the universities, Institute of Education, is working with the government to improve primary and secondary education, curriculum, materials, methods, systems of teaching, as well as teachers training, headmasters training, and so on. So we are involved in that. Apart from that, we are also providing courses, MAs in educational leadership for district education officers. So that course was designed by us with Columbia University in the United States, and we provide that course, 1 year full-time residential course to district education officers, Thana education officers who come in for this course. And we provide it free of charge. It costs us about $18,000 per person, but we do it because we think that this will ultimately have an impact in the education system in our country. So that's being done. Another area that our university, Institute of Education, is trying to do is early childhood development. And then we have a course, again, at Columbia University, developed a course on early childhood development. It's a 1-year MA course in early childhood development, and we have now 3 or 4 batches have graduated already from that, and hopefully this will have an impact ultimately on our understanding of early childhood development and create a critical mass of leaders in providing early childhood development or early childhood experience for our children. So, there are 3 or 4 things that I would like now to emphasize for the future of Bangladesh's education. Of course, quality of education has to improve, teaching learning has to improve, curriculum has to be developed. We have not, we have only started looking at secondary school curriculum. Primary school curriculum has been revamped already. Secondary education is, we are working on it. Then we need to also develop courses which can be put in the website, which children and as well as teachers could access. So BRAC has got a website, educational website, where you find class 8 maths course there, and all the way that you can learn maths. It's all there. The teacher can get help, students can get help, things like that. So hopefully in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, we'll be able to put all the Bangladesh's education materials on the website so that children would be able to access them, the teachers would be able to access them once, of course, Bangladesh is connected. Bangladesh's schools are not connected at this moment. You can't get internet service in most schools. So hopefully the government has really taken a program now to connect Bangladesh, and I think day before yesterday, some $460 million were allocated to connectivity for Bangladesh's internet service provision. So if that is done, and if all the schools are connected, then I think we can develop materials and methods of teaching, not only helping children to access them, but also teachers to be able to access them as to how to teach them better. So the teachers ultimately will become facilitators in a classroom, and teaching can also be, we can also get the best teachers to teach a class, and we can beam it to any class that they wish to through internet, wish to access that. So we are now working on these, and a whole team is BRAC working on this technology-based education. And as you know, that there is a world-famous Khan Academy, which is now revolutionizing education, particularly science and maths education in the United States. The whole of California is now working on Khan Academy's curriculum that he has developed. And we hope to do similar kind of things for Bangladesh, and hopefully we will democratize education. So the poorest children in the remotest corner will have access to high quality education if they wish to have that. Now, the subject that I was given to talk about is community education. So community, what other kind of educational experience community is having from us? We have 95,000 community health promoters and 10,000 community health supervisors. So 95,000 actually supervised by 10,000. And we are teaching a lot of things about health and hygiene and well-being and all that. So these are also community learning centers being created throughout Bangladesh, so that women now not only, they don't have to be persuaded to provide immunization for their children, they bring their children by themselves. So this has happened over the last 20 years. And also hygiene, I try to look at whether Unilever's soap is selling more in the countryside or not. Because hygiene means that you have to wash your hands with soap number of times during the day. Is it happening or not? So I'm looking at Unilever's sales figures in each thana to look at how our program is doing in terms of hygiene, sort of practice in rural Bangladesh. And then we have got other programs like those children who drop out because of poverty after 5 years of education. Can you provide some other training so that they can get a skills training? So we provide various kinds of skills training to them. And one of the things is we call STAR, providing skills training by what is called ustads, the mentors. So these are a car mechanic who is really good. He will take 2 of them, and we'll pay him to teach these 2 for 6 months, and then these 2 will become car mechanic themselves and find jobs, or they will be absorbed in the company that the ustad is working. So in this way, we have got about 5,000 of these young people have got jobs, and we will be continuing to do that. So I've got a big plan for getting skills training going in a big way for the youth of Bangladesh, those who are not going to continue education in universities and colleges, but would need training to be good, skilled operators of various kinds. So we'll be setting up a number of different skills training operations, where thousands of people will be trained in various sectors. Hospitality is one, building, trade, construction, all kinds of areas that one could develop skills and then be a better operator or more skilled person and earn more money. Nowadays, Bangladesh sends a lot of people abroad, but most of them are unskilled, and they're at the bottom of the pit. I don't want this to continue forever. We want to train them before we send them. We want them to do a decent job and earn a decent salary. So ultimately, it will also help Bangladesh in improving the present remittance that is so important for Bangladesh at this moment. Almost 10% of our GDP comes from remittances. So it is important. And if they could double or treble their salaries, it could become 20% of GDP come from abroad. So this is what we are trying to do. Now, the 2 or 3 areas in the future that I have already said the technology could help. The other area is early childhood development. Early childhood is somehow or other we have missed out completely. We think early childhood is preschool. Kindergarten, but it is not. Early childhood actually starts from the mother's womb and goes on to 2-3 years, when children who are given right kind of stimulation will develop certain neurons in their brain will be switched on, and certain neurons will not be if right kind of stimulation is not provided at the right time. So at 6 months, at 10 months, at 15 months, which switches has to be turned on, the mothers need to understand that and understand how these could be stimulated, the kind of stimulation necessary to switch them on. So if we understand those, then we have to get the mothers to understand those. And then we have to also, not only mothers, but right now mothers are also working in the outside. So caregivers, most of them are in creches. So the caregivers in creches has to be trained as to how to stimulate the children's motor function and stimulate their understanding of that. So this is one area, and the other area is social and emotional learning. There is such a thing called social and emotional learning, and there is a science of it, and you can teach it to be a better person, to be able to get on with people, to be able to work in a group, and not just an individual, but a group in a society, and that is to me is very important, and we have already started working on this social and emotional learning part of education. In whether it is primary or secondary, you can improve the quality of human being in terms of him as a social person, taking responsibility for his actions, and so on. So this is a new area that we need to work on this in Bangladesh, and hopefully we will ultimately succeed in getting a better polity in Bangladesh. So I'll stop now. Thank you so much, and I'll take questions if you have any.
Your Excellency, it was a very nice speech. We learned a lot. I'm Hussein. I'm working with AKDN. I would just draw your attention. If BRAC is working towards educating in environmental development to the school students, because near future we are seeing the climate changes happening in Bangladesh, and this sort of education would really be important for our country. Thank you.
True. We do have environmental education. Bangladesh's curriculum do have this social and environmental studies. But environmental, I mean, we need to understand it better. Obviously, not only in primary education, but also secondary education, tertiary education. In fact, the entire society needs to understand what environmental protection means and how we adapt to the future of the planet, so that we don't ruin the future of our the generations coming in the future. There are 2 or 3 things that is being done right now. Of course, we are not the people who are creating the problems of climate change or creating. It is the Western countries who are consuming more and producing these changes in our planet. But we need to adapt to certain things. And BRAC is now working on 2 or 3 areas. One is what kind of agriculture is needed if the sea level rises, and it has already started rising. And if you see in southern Bengal, Bangladesh, we have saline water coming into the land and making the lot of our land saline. Salinity is part of the problem. So we are now working on crops which grow on saline soil. And we are finding some, and we are adapting some, working on that. So this is an agricultural work that we are trying to do, and the crops which are suitable for those. We are also looking at, there will be the climate change is not only just brings in sea level rises, but also create other problems. There will be areas of Bangladesh which will not have enough rainfall. So you have to also try and develop crops which can survive on drought situation. And in some areas there will be floods. I've never heard of Pakistan having floods, but in the last 3 years, we are having floods in Pakistan. And so Pakistan needs to now develop crops which will survive waterlogging, so that at this moment Pakistan doesn't have it. And so waterlogged, I mean, in Bangladesh, of course, we have had floods almost every year in parts of Bangladesh. So we know some crops which survive in saline water, in deep water rice. We have that, and I'm sure that Pakistan could borrow from us some of these varieties of rice which grow in deep water. So these are some of the things that we are doing, and also early warning system of what kind of weather we are going to have in the next few months, next few days. We are developing a whole system. And we have got weather stations. BRAC has weather stations all over Bangladesh. So we are not really dependent on the Bangladesh weather forecasters at all. We have got our own satellite imagery coming into our own systems, so that we are more prepared than the country itself. So we share our data with the government, and so we are preparing for all kinds of eventualities where our country will face climate change, hazards.
I am Colonel Ashraf, principal of Art International School. Earlier I was the principal of Aga Khan Education. I have got two very small questions. First question is about quality education, and the second one absolutely to you as a person. We have been talking, and you are talking about the education, mass education, the total country. But let me ask you the question about the quality education. Because
quality?
Yes, you have started BRAC University and it is doing good. But you know that throughout the world, actually university is supposed to be not the teaching center, it is supposed to be the research center. In Bangladesh perspective, none of the universities, public or private, has got any attention whatsoever about research. So, what is your plan, vision, or how do you see about the quality of education? At least we should have at least one university which can compete with the rest of the world, where the question, when the question of quality education comes. The second question is to you, sir. I know that you are a big dreamer. You have implemented, or you are working on too many dreams, and still you have maybe that some of your dreams will remain unfulfilled in your lifetime. Are you really writing them down, or are you sharing your dreams with the people you are preparing for the next generation of Bangladesh? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this question, because I think you have hit right at the center of education. Research is absolutely important, and universities have always done research. Universities and these research have provided the innovation and um, and a driving force for countries' enterprise and technological improvements and so on. So not only universities, teachers need to understand research and while teaching, but also sharing their research findings with the industry at large to be able to benefit from this research. Bangladesh, I'm afraid that Bangladesh universities are not research-oriented at all. At one time, Dhaka University used to be a very high quality research university. You know that Satyam Bose-Einstein theory came out of Dhaka University. So it was not like this in the past, but now Dhaka University professors don't do much research. The only university which is doing some research is BRAC University, and we are finding problems. Research means we need money, and money we can also raise from donors. So BRAC can get the NGO Affairs Bureau to approve it faster, and then we give it to the university. So that's how we are trying to get money for research into BRAC University. And BRAC University's present research budget, I think this year, it's about $20 million worth of research being done by BRAC University faculty as well as others who are associated with us. So I think we are involved in research, and we will continue to be involved in research, because without research really you can't really teach better. Knowledge has to be fresh to be important. And that's why universities do research, so that they teach better also. The other thing is that of course, in my own lifetime, I won't see all the things that I've started. I'll build an university in the next few years, a campus, which will have at least capacity for 12,000 students. And I have got many other ideas which needs to be implemented after I am gone. So all I'm trying to do is to get the right people in the right place to succeed me, so that BRAC's work is carried on. I tell you a story about the sustainable institutions. Which institution sustains? A historian in 1994, I was getting an honorary degree from the Queen's University in Canada, and he was graduating, getting his PhD from Queen's University in history. So I asked him, what's the subject on which you did your research? He said, I looked at 16th century European institutions. How many of them? 500 of them I looked at. So I said, what did you find? He said, only 33 survive today. So I said, what are these 33? He says, 29 of them are universities, 2 churches, 1 parliament, and 1 business. So I said, what business? He said, Hudson Bay Company. They still have a little bit in Canada. But it was a big company in 16th century, because they were doing trade with Hudson Bay in Europe. And the 2 churches, 1 parliament is the Icelandic parliament. And the 29 universities, of course, we know Oxford, Cambridge, Uppsala, Heidelberg, Sorbonne, and so on. So I said to him, why does universities survive and others don't? So he says, I can only speculate, I can't say why. One thing is that the universities have been training leaders in societies. So even if the king didn't like the university, but his prime minister was educated from that university. So his prime minister saw to it that the university was not harmed by the king. So it survived. So leaders were created by universities. And then the other thing is that universities are self-governed institutions. So they are not under anybody's. There's no shareholders having problem. So shareholders are the fellows and professors. So they saw to it that their universities survive and flourish. So these are some of the. So institutions to survive need to do something important for society, need to do something relevant to the needs of the society, and be able to evolve with the evolving needs of society. So if the BRAC can do that, then BRAC will survive.
Sir, I'm Moiz. I work as a deputy CEO in an insurance company.
Yes.
I wonder about two things coming from the very end of your lecture as well. I work in zones and regions also, regional areas and zonal areas.
Yes.
You see, besides very good universities in Dhaka and other places, we have got a lot of people working with us. So, you know, when we ask someone who have graduated in early 70s, and again we ask some other employee who have passed out very lately to come up with the drafts or the proposals or the letters, maybe take an education in the same area from the same family, but the output is totally different. The one who have done in early 70s very well come up with all the solutions and papers, even they writing good in English as well. So they are same people from same area, but the new generation, I'm not talking about the good universities passing, I'm talking about general, will not be able to come up with that kind of solution.
Right.
So this is, I wonder why this happens. And secondly, of course, there is one very good thing that also happens. Like we have got a lot of maids in our house. Sometimes if we want them to write something or make a list for the groceries, they can't do it. But their daughters, they can very well do it. So these are two different kind of...
Who can do it? Your maids can do it, but
maids cannot do it.
But
their daughters. Their daughters.
Their daughters can do it, yes. Yeah. So that's the next generation. Yeah.
These are the two different kind of things that
experience you have. So one is the quality of education you are talking about. The expansion, linear expansion of education. In other words, more people now go to university than ever before. So Dhaka University has 8,000 students when I was there, and Dhaka University now has more than 30,000 students now. So linear expansion has happened, and the quality has dropped. And in the other thing that you said, that your maids, her daughter can speak, because most of the daughters are going to school. 95% of the girls of Bangladesh are actually going to school, and they are learning. So the garment wallahs tell me that they have done a great revolution in Bangladesh in creating a whole new industry and creating so many jobs for people, particularly young women. And I tell them that throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we organized women for power, gave them financial services, microfinance, made them entrepreneurs. And then we set up schools for their children. So we have, BRAC has itself got 10 million children. More than 60% of them are girls, have gone through BRAC schools. And who are these children? They are the children of these women who were getting our financial support, many of them. So we have developed a whole ecosystem for large numbers of women with primary education coming into towns, not getting married at the age of 13, and creating opportunity for garment industry to have them and finding them. So the ecosystem for the development of garment industry is not done by garment industry, it's done by us. So they should remember that.
Thank you very much for a very enlightening speech, Sir Abed. As you have rightly mentioned, we have by now achieved to have compulsory education in Bangladesh. I was wondering if we could also achieve universal education, because we have seen that even starting from preschool up to university, the children who are attending the preschool, school or university, they go through different syllabus. And the syllabus are not really universal. And that's why, suppose children who have studied in O-level, Cambridge, English medium, Bengali medium, they have all different syllabus, and when they want to go to university, they face problems there. Do you think it would be possible to gather all the educationists in Bangladesh and talk about universal education? And I also want to go one step further and see if, because you are a famous educationist, world-renowned educationist, could we also take it to a higher level, that is at a global level, we have universal education for our children?
When you say universal education, I suppose you mean that it should be the same education for everybody else, right? It is the main thing. Yes, this is a big problem in Bangladesh. Right now, of course, we have madrasa education, and madrasa education board will not listen to core curriculum that government wants to implement. So that's a group of people who are remaining outside what the government wants them to do. The basic learning of maths and science and English is not being done in madrasas. So a substantial percentage, about 12 to 15% of our children now go to madrasas, and they're not learning their basic core curriculum at all. Then there is the Bengali medium schools, which are, some are good, but most of them are bad because the teachers are not trained and so on. But in English medium schools, not all of them are good, but some are quite good. And they are now keeping up the elites' need to have high quality education so that they can send their children abroad and have quality education. This is being met to some extent by some of these English medium schools. I suppose what will happen is that if the government now tries to say that all English medium schools should go, we should have all universal system, this will also be wrong, because those who are trying to do better will be stopped from doing it. So I would say that for the moment, I suppose both Bengali and English medium schools should be supported, but what we should look at is whether quality education is being provided or not. In Bengali medium too, you can provide quality education. It is not the medium which matters, it's the quality, is the teaching learning that is done, which ultimately involves children's learning. So if you can do that, media will not matter. So that's what we are trying to do. So BRAC has just started a system called Nobodhara schools. We have to start with two high schools, and see that in Bengali medium we can come up with high quality schools in Bengali medium. So we'll be experimenting with that for the next few years and see whether we can teach better. Thank you.